Sean, what's up?
Greetings, Edgerenka. Greetings, viewers. Edgerenka, let's look briefly at what may very well be a culture of exclusivity in the public affairs practice here in the Virgin Islands. That is creating roadblocks and clouds of uncertainty, and even runs the risk of blurring the lines of communication and creating a divide between government and the community. Now, government press officials, they ought to be advocates of government's plans, programs, and policies, and a number of other functions that they do perform. In fact, a government public affairs office is central to the whole system of communicating with the people, says Sheila Tate, a former U.S. press secretary. And when one looks at a statement coming out from the Department of Information and Public Relations on February 19 this year, that reads that the Department of Information and Public Relations is inviting the public to tune in to a public eye for an exclusive interview with the Premier. It really begs the question, why should a government agency have, or thinks that they would have, an exclusive interview with a member of government when they are in fact the agency responsible for the dissemination of government information? And this, I am suggesting, runs much, much deeper than simply a misnomer or a grammatical oversight of some kind. In fact, exclusivity in media and communications is not prescribed for public affairs. You may recall that in 1864, in terms of the written information, America's 16th President Abraham Lincoln said, "Let the people know the facts and the country will be safe." But listen to this subtle example of this, what we call culture of exclusivity at the contract signings held earlier today between the Virgin Islands government and Utland Heavy Equipment for roadworks in Ballast Bay, and also W&W Reliable Construction for work on the Eastern Sewerage Project. You'll be hearing Acting Permanent Secretary Anthony McMaster in the Ministry of Communications and Works.
At this time, we would like to give the members of the media an opportunity, a brief opportunity, to ask any questions that are born in that you would like to present to the minister or any of the contractors at this point in time. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. The 5-minute duration has expired.
We'll give you 5 more.
Thank you.
Well, Sean, that's a little interesting clip. I think you could look at it a couple of ways. I would give, of course, the government the benefit of the doubt in saying that 5 minutes, the 5-minute term used by Mr. McMaster may have been a metaphor for a brief, a short period of time, and not that not that the media would have been held to 5 minutes. But I can see your point that the whole desire to curtail what appears to be the attempt to curtail media participation in the question and answer period, I think is duly noted. It's a sad and interesting development that's happening here in the territory, Sean. I was looking, there was a furor a few months ago about particularly the online sites and their behavior, sensationalism, some inaccuracies,
some inappropriate practices.
Yes. And I was looking for a code of ethics that media houses could follow. And I stumbled on an organization, an international organization actually, that members of is association membership, where members of the press join the association, and the name of the organization escapes me at this moment. But the history behind the formation of the organization was that during, I think it was like 1947, the then president, and that name escapes me as well, the then president said to the media, and the media was carrying on with a lot of sensationalism, behaving in much the same way some of the media houses behave today, and reporting inaccurate information and creating tension and hostility in the public. And the president at that time said to the media, you need to regulate yourself. You have the freedom of the press your freedom comes with a certain responsibility, and you need to regulate yourself, or we will have to regulate you, because we can't allow your freedom to infringe on the freedom of the total population and cause what could very well be a security risk. Because if persons start becoming hostile to each other, you don't know when that hostility and anger is going to turn into violence. And so the president said, listen, you either regulate yourself or we will regulate you. And then the press at that time came up with an organization for press reporters to join. And they developed a code of ethics and conduct for them to adhere to. And I think that sort of created a more harmonious relationship between the government and the media. And I see that the same thing a discussion of a code of ethics that the media can adhere to, and the media themselves need to develop this code of conduct and code of ethics, and not the government so much, but the media.
Yes.
And perhaps that would create a behavior that is best for the media and best for the general population. Now, coming out, having said that, and I don't want to be too long, coming out of this, that's the situation that we've had in the past few months in the row between some media houses and the government. There may have developed a mistrust on the part of the government. You have like cause and effect. It might be a mistrust of the government by the government for the media, and so the government may feel the consequence of some inaccurate reporting, some sensationalization, some misinformation, some tension that's caused by this particular behavior. The government may feel that some members of the press some members of the press you can't be trusted to report accurate information, and so that the government itself may need to develop its own press in order to get the more accurate information out to the public.
And that's accepted, because that is the function of the public affairs within the government. In this case, the Department of Information and Public Relations. Their role is to function as an internal press, as journalists, if you prefer, within the government service, to provide the free press, the media, with information, and to also ensure that the community is duly informed on various policies and programs being pursued by a particular government. But I should add that Permanent Secretary McMaster, acting, did express his appreciation for the questions asked by the only 2 journalists who were present at that particular function, which is also sending, in my opinion, indicative of how the media is responding to functions like these, because there is a perception that the participation is limited. Therefore, it is possible that some don't see the value, the relevance in actually attending. And also Minister Vanterpool, following the event, did speak to me and indicated that he's willing to field questions, and he is not really too hung up on a particular time frame. Because, of course, I would suspect that the government officials ought to be willing, and I am sure that in many cases they are very willing to communicate with the press, as we have seen on several occasions. But could it be, is the question I'm asking, that there's a culture of exclusivity within the dissemination process, where there may be some officials who perceive that it is better for the government officials to be protected from any onslaught from the media? And there are instances too, when you attend press conferences and you ask questions off the topic, that there are some who have from time to time expressed some form of disapproval of that practice. But that is normal, because that is the role of the press, and the media should not, as you indicated, indulge in any sort of unfair practice. Therefore, the public officials ought to feel safe with the responses that they give to questions at these functions.
Yeah, I remember, Sean, I had a similar situation during the signing of the Bywater contract, where I wanted to ask some questions and was shut down, actually. And as a matter of fact, a strategy I had to use was I had to give the question that I wanted to ask to another colleague who had the opportunity to ask at that time, so that I could get that information out. But I don't think it's safe to say that I don't think the quote-unquote exclusivity that you're talking about has become a culture, because I think a culture is a big word, which it would mean an ongoing development, or it becomes a way of life.
Yes.
Culture more connotates a way of life, so I wouldn't go as far as saying a culture, but I think it's an error in judgment for government officials to say that they have an exclusive right, they're getting exclusive rights or interviews with a member of an elected official who is a public figure. So that may have been a mistake or a misuse.
Maybe an oversight.
A misuse of terms.
Yes.
A misuse of terms because that's a common term.
It could have also been well-intentioned.
Yeah, that's a common term by media people.
Yes.
I have an exclusive interview, so
but that's the free press.
I'm better than you.
Okay.
So that's how that's used. So I'm looking at this and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a culture, but certainly I think it's an error in judgment to use exclusivity in that regard from the government information source.
But it's important because there are two actions, behaviors that we have identified on both sides of the spectrum. On the side of government, we are saying that they ought not to indulge in the perception that they have exclusive rights over the dissemination of public information. And on the media side, the media has a responsibility to be factual and to report as is and not based on their own misconceptions or in some cases ill-advised
or political agenda.
Or even political agenda, precisely.
Political agenda.
Because your personal and political ideals ought not to enter the practice of journalism. I may have my own political views, but they do not enter what I write or communicate to the masses, because at the end of the day, I don't know what is the political affiliation of our listeners, our viewers, and so forth, and our readers, as the case may be. So that's why we ought to be neutral. And in fact, public servants ought not to expect journalists to be their friends or their foes. We are simply working on behalf of the community to ensure that they are duly informed so that they can be empowered. Because in today's society, we know that information is definitely invaluable, and the more informed citizens are, the more empowered they are, the more informed they are. And I heard you speaking earlier about a very crucial issue dealing with non-communicable diseases, and that's a very important issue. And there we see the importance of government and media working hand in hand to safeguard the interests of the community.
Well, Sean, we've extended our time, but certainly it's an issue that we're going to hear more about in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that report.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a break.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.